guys, Jason Harwood here. I've been talking with you about the productivity tips that I learned from playing Legos with my son. I hope you've watched all the videos in this playlist. If not, go check them out so that you're up to speed with what I want to share with you today. Which is, how do we go from identifying, okay, what's the big thing I want to accomplish? Chunking it down into smaller packages. What's the individual packages of things that I need to get done? And then I start looking and I say, okay, so what am I going to do today? Well, you take each project, and there's really only a handful of things that you need to worry about with each project. And primarily that is the next step. What's the next thing? Because trust me, I've built many Lego sets with my children. I only have 7 kids, and so I've built a lot of Lego sets. And even if you know what you're looking for in the end, and even if you have the Lego sets broken down into bags so that you focus in on this bag and this bag and this bag, you can still mess up the project. I've messed them up personally. I've watched my kids mess up dozens of Lego sets by simply not knowing what the next step is. What's next is an important, critical question in productivity. To not get too worried about 50 steps from now, right? You've got it in your mind. You kind of have an idea of what 50 steps from now might look like and what the next major project is, because I've got my major projects in mind. I know what I need to work on next Tuesday, but I'm not focused on what I need to work on next Tuesday. I'm focused on the next step. And it's so easy, like Lego has taught us so much about managing our lives, because in every single page it just says only worry about these 3 pieces. Boom. Just put these 3 pieces right there, and right there. Just do that. Just do that with those 3 pieces and then turn the page. Now only worry about those 4 pieces and just do that right there. Well, I have found so much value in doing the same thing with my life. I just identify a project and I say, I'm not worried about every step I have to take, but I am really focused in on the next step. What's the next step? And then I tie that together with what I taught you about habits in the habits playlist. And I take the next step and I say, how do I make it easier? What cue am I going to give myself so that I click in my brain, oh, now is the time to do the next step? And how am I going to celebrate it? If you haven't watched the habits playlist, go do it. I talk about each of those steps, right? But I've made a habit of productivity by simply identifying what's the next thing I need to do. How do I make it as easy and as simple as possible to make sure I do it? What cue am I going to give myself? And how am I going to celebrate once I've accomplished it? And once I do those things, I focus in and say, all right, this is the big project. What's the next step? And once I do that, what's the next step? What's the next step? What's the next step? Now, one key is you do not record the next step in your brain. You think about the next step in your brain. You've got to record it outside of your brain. I use an app. I know people use notebooks. I know people use things like Evernote or OneNote or other productivity tools. Whatever tool you want to use, do not imagine that you're going to keep, right? This is just one Lego project. You probably have 50 Lego projects on your plate right now. Don't imagine that you're going to keep the next step for every one of those straight in your brain and that at the exact right moment your brain's going to tell you the exact right thing to do. It's not going to work. So you think about what's the next step and then you record it. I record it in an app on my phone because I've always got my phone. And it's crazy the places I am when I have a thought about, oh, I ought to do that next on this project. And if I think, oh, write it down later, I don't write it down later. I have to put it into my phone right then. So I'll say to people, I'm not texting, I'm just giving myself a to-do list item, putting in my next step. My team knows when I grab my phone and start putting something in the middle of a meeting, they know I'm not texting. They know I'm putting in my next step on a project because I've done it so consistently. I've built a habit of that. So only focus on your next step. What's the next thing you've got to do? Once you complete that, celebrate and identify what's the next step and do that. And the next step. And sometimes it's, oh, the next step, I can't do it for a week. Okay, then build in your next step, give yourself a reminder, and move on to your next project. Move on to the next thing you want to build. Move on to the next most important thing and do the next step and do the next step. You will see your productivity increase significantly. You're not going to do a whole lot more. That's the thing. But you will focus in on the most important things, right? You know exactly what you want it to look like. So if somebody comes along and says, hey, build a tank. You're going to say, nope, I'm not building a tank because this is what I want it to look like in the end. No tanks here. And so you're going to know exactly what to focus on. You're going to know the projects that are most important to you, and you'll know the next step action to take to move yourself forward, move yourself forward. Productivity is simply about being clear on where I want to go, being focused on getting there, and making consistent progress. And then you're productive. I hope this has given you a couple of tips. Make sure you also watch my playlist about powerful mindset and habits because they all work together. Can't have one without the others. And also my playlist about sales skills because no matter who you are, you sell. Make sure to subscribe and get notifications so you see my next video that comes along. Thanks so much.